The rain-slicked streets of Yokohama gleamed under the sodium lamps, a labyrinth of neon reflections and shadowed alleys where the humid night air carried the faint tang of salt from the distant bay. In the heart of the city's underbelly, where fishing docks gave way to towering warehouses and discreet high-rises, power moved like a current, silent, relentless, and often unseen. The Yamamoto Gumi, a Yakuza syndicate with roots tangled deep in the port's smuggling routes, controlled much of the flow. Contraband shipments masked as seafood crates, protection rackets on luxury imports, and alliances forged in smoke-filled backrooms. But tonight, in a nondescript diner on the edge of Chinatown, that current was about to surge into chaos. Hana Kim wiped the steam from the diner's window, her reflection flickering against the glass like a ghost in the fog. At 28, she had built a quiet life here, far from the bustling streets of Seoul, where her family ran a modest import business. Tea leaves and spices, nothing flashy, but enough to keep the old grudges at bay. She'd come to Japan 5 years ago on a work visa, chasing stability after a messy breakup, and ended up slinging coffee and ramen in this hole-in-the-wall spot called Midnight Harbor. The place was a neutral ground, a greasy beacon for night shift workers, truckers, and the occasional low-level enforcer from both Japanese and Korean crews. Hana liked the rhythm, the sizzle of woks, the low hum of fluorescent lights, the way the rain drummed on the tin roof like impatient fingers. But lately, the rhythm had faltered. Whispers filtered through the steam, rumors of a territory skirmish between the Yamamoto Gumi and the Incheon Tigers, a Korean outfit eyeing Yokohama's docks for their own heroin pipelines. Hana dismissed most of it. She wasn't in that world, or so she told herself. Her grandfather, Ji-hoon Kim, had called last week from Seoul, his voice crackling over the line like dry leaves. "Hana-ya, be careful. Those Japanese wolves are circling again. Remember what happened to your uncle." She hadn't pressed. Family history was a minefield of old debts and lost shipments. Instead, she focused on the dinner rush, pouring miso soup for a table of weary fishermen, their tattoos peeking from rolled sleeves, Irizumi dragons coiling like warnings. The bell above the door jingled sharply at 10:30, cutting through the diner's haze of cigarette smoke and sizzling oil. A man entered, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit that strained against his frame, his face half-shadowed by the brim of a fedora. He scanned the room with eyes like polished obsidian, then nodded once to Hana before sliding into a corner booth. Kenji Yamamoto. She knew the name from the neighborhood gossip, the way locals crossed the street when his black Mercedes prowled by. Head of the Yamamoto Gumi, a man who knelt for no one, or so the stories went. What was he doing here in a place like this? Hana approached, notepad in hand, her heart thudding a little too fast. "Irashaimase, what can I get you?" Her Japanese was fluent, laced with the careful politeness she'd honed over years away from home. Kenji looked up, his gaze steady, appraising. "Just coffee, Black, and whatever you're having for the late shift." His voice was low, controlled, like the rumble of an idling engine. Up close, she noticed the faint scar tracing his jawline, a remnant of some long-ago street fight, and the way his fingers, missing the pinky joint, a Yakuza tell, drummed lightly on the table. She poured the coffee, steam curling between them, and slid into the booth opposite him without thinking. Neutral ground or not, curiosity had always been her weakness. "Long night?" she asked, stirring her own tea. He sipped, eyes never leaving hers. "Longer than most. You Hana Kim?" The question hung like the rain outside, heavy, unexpected. She nodded slowly, the diner's chatter fading to a distant buzz. "How do you know my name?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "This city talks, and I listen." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "Your family's business, tea and spices, clean on the surface. But the Tigers think otherwise. They've been asking questions about a shipment that went missing 3 years back, one that crossed my docks. Hana's grip tightened on her mug. The missing shipment, her uncle's last run, vanished off a freighter near Busan. Officially, it was a storm. Unofficially, fingers pointed at Japanese rivals. Her grandfather had never forgiven the Yamamoto Gumi, calling them thieves in every family gathering. That's ancient history. Why tell me? Because history has a way of washing up. Kenji glanced at the window, where headlights sliced through the downpour. A black SUV idling across the street, wipers slashing rhythmically. And because you're in the middle of it now, the Tigers sent a man here tonight, looking for leverage. Her pulse quickened. The diner felt smaller, the walls pressing in with the scent of damp wool and fried garlic. Leverage? I'm just a waitress. Not to them. To them you're Kim Blood, and blood pays debts. He stood abruptly, tossing yen on the table. More than enough for the coffee and then some. Finish your shift. I'll have a car wait. It's not safe here. Hana laughed, sharp and disbelieving. But the sound died as the door burst open again. 2 men in leather jackets, faces hard and Korean accented, stormed in, eyes locking on her. Hana Kim, where's the ledger your uncle hid? One barked, hand slipping inside his coat. Kenji moved like shadow, positioning himself between her and the door, his posture shifting from relaxed to coiled. The diner froze, forks clattering, a cook ducking behind the counter. Outside, thunder rolled, masking the rev of engines pulling up. She backed toward the kitchen, mind racing. A ledger? Her uncle had mentioned something once, coded entries in a notebook about diverted cargo. But that was years ago, buried with his death. Why now? And why did Kenji's eyes hold not just warning, but something deeper? Possession. Like he was already claiming her from the storm. As the first intruder lunged, Kenji's hand shot out, grabbing a chair to block him. "Not here!" he growled, voice ablade. "Take it outside!" But Hana saw it then, the flicker in the intruder's eyes, a burner phone buzzing in his pocket, and beyond the window, more shadows detaching from the SUV. This wasn't a shakedown, it was an extraction. And Kenji Yamamoto, the man who knelt for no one, was her unlikely shield, or her captor. What had her family hidden that was worth dragging her into the rain-soaked war between syndicates? The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets as the first intruder shoved past the chair Kenji had thrust forward. Rain lashed the windows in sheets, turning the glass into a blurred veil that hid the gathering shadows outside. Hana's heart hammered against her ribs, the air thick with the metallic tang of fear sweat and the lingering spice of chili oil from the kitchen. She edged backward, her sneakers slipping on the linoleum slick with tracked-in water, until her spine hit the counter. The cook, a wiry old man named Taro, had vanished into the storage room, leaving only the sizzle of an unattended wok to punctuate the standoff. "Hand her over, Yamamoto," the lead intruder snarled, his accent thick with Busan grit, eyes darting between Kenji and Hana. He was built like a dockworker, broad and scarred, with a tattoo of a snarling tiger creeping up his neck, Incheon tigers, no doubt. His partner flanked him, and already drawing a compact pistol from his jacket, the suppressor glinting under the lights. "The girl comes with us. Family business." Kenji didn't flinch. His stance was a study in controlled menace, feet planted wide, one hand casually slipping into his coat pocket, where Hana knew, instinctively from the neighborhood tales, a blade or worse waited. "This is neutral ground," he said, voice even, like he was discussing the weather. "You tigers forget that. You start a war, neither side wins. Walk away." The leader laughed, a bark that echoed off the Formica tables. "Neutral? Your dock stole our cargo 3 years back. That ledger's got the proof. Plates on the trucks, manifests rerouted through Yokohama. The Kims owe us blood for it." His gaze snapped to Hana, hardening. And you're the key, little cousin. Grandpa Ji-hoon sent us, said you'd know where it's hidden. Hana's mind reeled, fragments of old conversations surfacing like debris in a flood. Her uncle's death, officially a fishing accident off the coast, but whispers in Seoul had always hinted at sabotage. The ledger, a battered notebook he'd kept in a safe under the floorboards of their family home, entries in coded Hangul about ghost shipments that vanished into Japanese ports. She'd glimpsed it once as a teen, dismissed it as boring accounting, but if the Tigers thought it pointed to Yamamoto Gumi theft, it explained the bad blood. And her grandfather, stubborn Ji-hoon, who'd railed against those island thieves for decades, sending muscle across the sea. That was desperation. "I don't have it," she said, voice steadier than she felt, stepping forward despite the tremor in her knees. The diner smelled of cooling coffee and ozone from the storm, the rain's rhythm a frantic underscore. "Whatever you're chasing, it's not here. Leave." The second man raised his gun, a silenced Beretta that caught the light like a promise of quiet violence. "Liar. We traced your calls. Burner to Seoul last month. Ji-hoon spilled enough. You're coming with us, or we take the whole place down." Kenji moved then, fluid as a river current, his free hand snapping out to grab the gunman's wrist. A sharp twist, and the weapon clattered to the floor, skittering under a booth. The man yelped, lunging with a fist that Kenji dodged effortlessly, countering with a knee to the gut that folded him like wet paper. But the leader was faster, pulling a knife, short, serrated, the kind used for gutting fish, and slashing toward Hana's side. She twisted away, the blade whispering past her apron, nicking the fabric with a faint rip. Adrenaline surged, hot and electric. She grabbed a hot plate from the counter, swinging it like a club. It connected with the leader's shoulder, eliciting a curse in Korean as he staggered. Kenji was on him in an instant, pinning him against the wall with an arm like iron, the scar on his jaw tightening with the effort. "Enough," Kenji growled, his breath steady despite the chaos. Outside, tires screeched, more vehicles pulling up, headlights piercing the downpour like accusatory fingers. The diner's phone rang shrilly from behind the counter, unanswered, its cords swaying like a noose. The pinned man spat blood, grinning through swollen lips. "You think this ends here? We've got eyes on your warehouses, Yamamoto. That ledger exposes your whole operation. Fake plates, bribed customs. The Kims hid it in plain sight, and she's the map." Hana's stomach twisted. Eyes on the warehouses. The Tigers had been bolder than rumors suggested, infiltrating Yokohama's ports with their own networks. She glanced at Kenji, his dark eyes meeting hers for a split second. Intense, unreadable, laced with that same possessive glint from earlier. Why was he fighting for her? Gratitude for a coffee? Or something deeper, tied to that missing shipment his group supposedly hijacked? Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but closing, the storm masking their approach. Kenji released the man with a shove, sending him sprawling into his groaning partner. "Go, before the cops complicate this." The intruders scrambled up, retreating through the door into the rain, but not before the leader shot Hana a venomous look. "We'll find you. Blood calls to blood." The bell jingled mockingly as they fled, engines roaring to life outside. Kenji turned to her, wiping a smear of blood from his knuckles. His own, a shallow cut from the scuffle. "You hurt?" She shook her head, the hot plate still clutched in white-knuckled hands, the diner's air now heavy with the acrid bite of spilled soy sauce and exertion. "What the hell was that? And why are you involved?" He holstered whatever he'd drawn. A slim derringer, she realized, tucked away seamlessly. Because that ledger isn't just history, it's leverage. If the Tigers get it, they flood my docks with their product, start a turf war that paints the streets red. He stepped closer, the scent of his cologne, sandalwood and rain cutting through the chaos. "Your family crossed paths with mine years ago. I didn't steal anything. It was a double cross from inside the Tigers, but proving it means finding that book first." Hana set the hot plate down, her mind racing through the implications. Her grandfather's call last week, urgent, evasive. Had he known the tigers were coming, and Kenji offering protection like it was his right? It felt like a debt she hadn't incurred, pulling her into a web of alliances and betrayals. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flickering through the rain-streaked windows. "We can't stay here," Kenji said, glancing at the door. "My car's out back. Come with me. Neutral ground's burned now." She hesitated, autonomy warring with the chill of vulnerability snaking down her spine. The diner, her sanctuary, suddenly felt like a trap. The hum of the fridge, a mocking reminder of normalcy, shattered. Trust him, a Yakuza boss with his own code, scars and secrets. But the alternative, facing the tigers alone, unraveling family ghosts in a storm, seemed worse. "Fine," she said finally, grabbing her coat from the hook, "but this doesn't make me yours to protect." His smile was faint, almost approving, as he held the kitchen door open. "Not yet." They slipped into the alley, rain soaking through her clothes in seconds, the cold bite of it shocking her skin. Behind them, the diner lights dimmed as Taro finally emerged, phone to his ear, murmuring to authorities. But as Kenji's Mercedes purred to life at the alley's end, Hana spotted it, a nondescript sedan idling at the street's corner, its driver hunched over a radio, watching their escape. Who had tipped the tigers to her shift tonight, and what other family secrets were buried in that ledger waiting to surface? The Mercedes sliced through the Yokohama night like a blade through silk, its tires hissing over rain-slicked asphalt that gleamed under sporadic street lamps. Inside, the cabin was a cocoon of leather and quiet tension, the engine's low growl underscoring the patter of rain on the roof. Hana gripped the armrest, her coat dripping onto the floor mats, the chill seeping into her bones despite the heater's warm blast. Kenji drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift, his profile etched sharp against the passing neon blur, Chinatown's lanterns fading into the industrial sprawl of warehouses hugging the bay. She stole a glance at him, the scar on his jaw catching the dashboard glow, a reminder of violence just barely contained. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice cutting the silence like a thrown knife. The question carried the weight of her reluctance, the push-pull of needing answers, while resenting the leash he seemed to offer. "A safe house?" Kenji replied, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "One of my operations, discreet, off the grid. No tigers have eyes there, yet." He accelerated through a yellow light, the wipers slashing rhythmically, smearing the world into streaks of red and gold from distant cargo cranes. The air inside carried the faint brine of the harbor, mixed with the metallic tang of his bloodied knuckles, now wrapped in a handkerchief from the glove compartment. Hana's mind churned, piecing together the fragments. The ledger, her uncle's ghost, surfacing after years in the family attic like a bad dream. She'd overheard arguments in Seoul, her grandfather's gravelly voice accusing the Yamamotos of rerouting shipments through falsified manifests, turning tea crates into covers for smuggled electronics, or worse. But Kenji's denial rang with conviction, his code evident in the way he'd shielded her without hesitation. Loyalty versus suspicion, it mirrored her own war, trusting a stranger over blood ties frayed by secrets. The sedan from the alley reappeared in the side mirror, a shadow weaving through traffic, 2 cars back, headlights dimmed, deliberate. "That tail," she said, nodding toward the glass. "Yours or theirs?" Kenji's jaw tightened, the missing pinky on his drumming fingers, a stark Yakuza signature against the wheel. Theirs, sloppy but persistent. They've got a mole feeding them roots, probably one of my dock runners, bought off with promises of a cut. He veered left onto a narrower road, the city giving way to chain-link fences and hulking silos, the air thickening with the diesel hum of idling trucks and the salty rot of fish markets shuttered for the night. Tension coiled like a spring as the sedan closed the gap, its engine revving to match their speed. Hannah's pulse quickened, the safe-house promise feeling fragile against the storm's fury, thunder rumbling like distant artillery, lightning fracturing the sky to illuminate rusted shipping containers stacked like forgotten tombs. "How do you know it's a mole?" she pressed, her independence flaring. She wasn't cargo to be shuttled. She needed to understand, to reclaim some control in this unraveling night. "Because patterns," Kenji said, voice clipped as he downshifted, taking a sharp turn into a fog-shrouded access road flanked by warehouses. The tires crunched over gravel, kicking up sprays that pelted the undercarriage. "Last month, a burner phone pinged from my secondary garage, same model as the one that thug had tonight. Traced it to an Incheon contact. And your grandfather's call. It lines up with their push. Ji-Hoon Kim's been stirring the pot, leaking just enough to draw them out." Hannah recoiled, the betrayal stinging like salt in a wound. Her grandfather, the rock of family dinners and stern advice, playing games with her life. The road narrowed, sodium lights casting elongated shadows that danced like watchers in the murk. The sedan followed, headlights bobbing closer, a false alarm of safety in the rain. "He wouldn't. Not without telling me." "Family debts blind men," Kenji murmured, pulling into a gated lot behind a nondescript warehouse, its corrugated walls scarred by years of salt and neglect. He punched a code into a keypad, 4 digits, beeping softly, and the gate slid open with a mechanical groan. Inside, the space opened to a makeshift garage, fluorescent strips flickering to life, revealing a row of black vans and tool benches cluttered with manifests and encrypted radios. The air smelled of oil and ozone, the distant lap of bay waves echoing through ventilation grates. They abandoned the Mercedes, Kenji ushering her toward a side door with a hand at her elbow, protective, not possessive, though the line blurred in her mind. "In here," he said, unlocking a reinforced steel panel that swung into a sparsely furnished room. Cot, table, a safe bolted to the floor. No windows, just the hum of a generator and the faint crackle of a police scanner on a shelf. Hina paced the concrete floor, boots echoing, as Kenji secured the door and checked his phone. A burner, she noted, screen lighting his face with blue pallor. "The ledger's key," he continued, pocketing it. "Your uncle documented a double cross. A Tiger lieutenant sold out the shipment to my rivals, not me. Plates switched at Busan, cargo diverted to a ghost freighter. If we find it, I clear my name. The Tigers lose their claim." She stopped, facing him, the room's confines amplifying their breaths. "And me? Am I just bait in your proof?" His eyes met hers, dark and steady, the scar pulling taut. "You're more. The Kims and Yamamotos, old bad blood, but I see the fire in you. Like my sister before the streets took her. I protect what's worth it." Vulnerability flickered, gone in an instant, replaced by the code that bound him. Never harm innocents, even in the grey of syndicates. Outside, engines growled, the sedan breaching the gate, tires spinning on wet gravel. Kenji drew his derringer, motioning her to the safe. "Hide that if they breach. Codes 1987, year of the lost shipment." Hannah's fingers trembled on the dial, the metal cold against her skin. As shouts echoed from the garage, Korean voices demanding entry. A muffled shot rang out, silenced but sharp, followed by the clatter of a body hitting the ground. The scanner spat static. "Back up en route. Disturbance at Pier 17. Kenji positioned himself at the door, back to the wall, listening to the intruder's footsteps. 3, maybe 4, fumbling with locks. The air grew heavy, laced with gunpowder and fear, the storm outside a chaotic symphony masking their advance. She cracked the safe, revealing stacks of yen and a ledger of his own, discreet entries on guard rotations, shipping logs. But as she rifled for a weapon, a folded note slipped out, coordinates to a dockside drop dated 3 years ago with her uncle's initials. Heart pounding, she pocketed it. Proof, or deeper entanglement. The door rattled, a boot slamming against it. "Yamamoto, give us the girl. We know Ji-hoon's blood runs true." Kenji's voice boomed through the barrier, buying time. "Walk away. This ends in truce or coffins." But Hana saw the behavioral tell, the intruder's pause, a burner buzzing again. Someone inside was coordinating, perhaps Taro, the cook, or worse, a family turncoat. As the first breach attempt splintered the frame, she wondered if the ledger exposed the tiger's own betrayal, would her grandfather's shouts of theft echo hollow, and what price would Kenji demand for pulling her deeper into his shadowed world? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The safe house door shuddered under another brutal kick, the reinforced steel groaning like a beast in pain, splintering wood from the frame scattering across the concrete floor. Hana's breath came in shallow bursts, the air thick with the acrid bite of gunpowder seeping through the cracks and the metallic tang of fear coating her tongue. She clutched the folded note in her fist, its edges digging into her palm, coordinates scrawled in faded ink: 35, 4437 degrees Ren, 139, 6380 degree, a dockside point near Yokohama's outer piers, stamped with her uncle's initials, HSK. Proof of what? A drop site for the stolen shipment or a trap her family had set long ago? The scanner on the shelf crackled with urgency. "Unit 7, Pier 17, shots fired, multiple suspects, hold position." Kenji pressed his back to the wall beside the door. Derringer gripped low and steady, his eyes flicking to her with that unyielding intensity. "Stay down," he murmured, voice a low rumble cutting through the chaos. "They breach. You hit the floor behind the cot. I'll handle the rest." His posture was all coiled restraint, the Yakuza code etched in every line. Protect the innocent, even if it meant spilling blood in a forgotten warehouse. But Hana saw the cost in the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, the way his scarred jaw clenched against the pain from his earlier cut. She nodded, dropping to a crouch beside the safe, the cold floor seeping through her damp jeans like icy fingers. Autonomy screamed at her to fight, not hide, but prudence won out. This wasn't her world, not yet, though the pull of it, the magnetic draw of Kenji's resolve, tugged at her like the bay's relentless tide. Outside, the storm howled, wind whipping rain against the warehouse walls in furious gusts, rattling loose panels and drowning the intruder's shouts in white noise. 3 voices now, Korean-inflected demands echoing, "Open up, Yamamoto!" "We know she's got the ledger's trail. Ji-hoon confirmed it." A muffled thump, metal on metal, suggested they were prying at the hinges with a crowbar scavenged from the garage. Hana's mind raced, piecing the investigative thread. The burner phone's buzz earlier, the sedan's persistent tale, human error or betrayal. Her grandfather's involvement gnawed at her, loyalty to blood versus the fear he'd sown by proxy. If he'd leaked her location to draw out the tigers, what did that make her? Pawn or protector of the family legacy? The door buckled inward with a screech, a sliver of the garage's fluorescent glare spilling through like an accusation. Kenji fired first, a suppressed pop that punched through the gap, eliciting a sharp yelp and the clatter of the crowbar dropping. "Back off!" he barked, his tone brooking no negotiation. "You want war on neutral soil? This is it." Footsteps scrambled, then regrouped. A return shot splintered the door higher up, the bullet embedding in the wall with a dull thud, inches from his head. Plaster dust rained down, coating his suit in a fine white haze. Hina's heart thundered, the room shrinking around her. The hum of the generator a frantic pulse, the scent of ozone from the storm mixing with cordite. She scanned the space for options. The cot's metal frame, a fire extinguisher bolted nearby, Kenji's ledger still open on the table with its cryptic entries on guard rotations and falsified plates. One line caught her eye, a reference to Ghost Freighter reroute Busan Yokohama 1987, manifest compromised by internal tiger source. If true, it corroborated Kenji's claim, not theft by the Yamamoto Gumi, but a turncoat within the tigers themselves. Her uncle's note aligned, pointing to the drop where evidence might still lie buried in a rusted container. Another barrage, 2 shots this time, grazing the door's edge and ricocheting off the safe with a spark. Kenji ducked, firing back, but the intruders pressed, a shadow wedging a boot into the widening gap. "The girl's coming with us!" the leader growled, his voice strained but defiant. "Ledger or not, Ji-hoon's calling in the debt. You hid her here, stole our blood." Kenji's laugh was short, bitter. "Hid? She's no one's prize. But if your boss sent you blind, tell him the truth. Your own man sold the shipment. Check your ledgers. Access code 47 Alpha, the one your lieutenant used to switch the plates." It was a calculated reveal, a clue tossed like bait to sow doubt, exploiting the behavioral tells Hana had noticed, the hesitation in their coordinated advance, like they were waiting for a signal that hadn't come. The boot withdrew abruptly, murmurs rippling outside. Doubt or a ploy? The storm chose that moment to turn hazardous, a sudden blackout plunging the safe house into inky darkness as thunder cracked overhead, the generator sputtering before dying with a whine. Power outage, common in these old warehouses during gales, but timed like sabotage, had a tiger cut the lines from the main panel. Shadows merged, disorienting, the only light a faint blue from Kenji's phone screen as he thumbed it on, casting eerie glows on his face. "Move!" he hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the back wall, where a ventilation grate loomed. Loose, perhaps an escape route, but as they reached it, the door gave way with a final crash, intruders tumbling in amid debris, flashlights stabbing the gloom like knives. Hana twisted free, lunging for the extinguisher, yanking the pin and unleashing a foaming blast at the nearest silhouette. It connected, choking coughs filling the air, buying seconds. Kenji tackled the leader, fists flying in a blur of grunts and thuds, no blades, honoring the diner's neutral echo even here. Hana scrambled to the grate, prying it open with raw adrenaline, the metal biting her fingers. Cool, briny air rushed in from the adjacent tunnel, a maintenance shaft snaking under the docks. "Kenji, here!" she called, voice hoarse over the fray. He broke free, a fresh cut blooming on his cheek, and shoved her into the duct first. "Go, crawl to the end. It outlets by the bay fence." She hesitated, the push-pull tearing at her. Leave him to the wolves or pull him in too. Loyalty versus fear, his code mirroring her own budding resolve. As she wedged inside, the tunnel's chill enveloped her, damp concrete scraping her elbows, the distant lap of waves a mocking lure. Behind, Kenji fired a parting shot, then followed, sealing the grate just as flashlight beams swept the room. The intruders' curses faded, but not their pursuit. Boots pounding toward the breach. Crawling through the suffocating dark, Hana unfolded the note again under the faint glow of her own phone, tracing the coordinates. If they reached the docks, could they unearth the truth before the tigers closed in? And what would her grandfather say when the ledger revealed not Yamamoto theft, but a Korean betrayal that shattered the family code? The tunnel seemed endless, every scrape echoing like pursuit, as the first drops of water from a leaking seam trickled down her neck. Cold reminder that escape came with its own hazards. The tunnel's damp chill clawed at Hana's skin, the concrete rough and unyielding under her palms as she inched forward. The faint glow of her phone screen illuminating rivulets of seawater snaking along the floor. Each breath echoed in the narrow confines, a labored rhythm syncing with the distant roar of the storm above, thunder rolling like an avalanche, masking any sounds of pursuit. Her knees ached from the crawl, jeans torn at the seams, but adrenaline propelled her, the folded note clutched in her teeth like a talisman. Behind her, Kenji's heavier breaths followed, punctuated by the occasional scrape of his shoulder against the wall. his derringer tucked into his belt to avoid snags. "Keep moving," he whispered, voice muffled but urgent, close enough that she felt the warmth of it on her back. The air grew saltier, laced with the rot of algae and diesel from the bay as the tunnel sloped upward. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the darkness pressing like a living thing, until a great ahead gleamed with diffused moonlight, filtered through the gale, silver and fractured. Hana reached it first, shoving with her shoulder until it gave way with a rusty screech, spilling them out onto a rain-lashed loading platform at the edge of Pier 17. They tumbled into the storm's embrace, wind-whipping sheets of water across the docks, the wooden planks slick and treacherous underfoot. Towering cranes loomed like skeletal guardians, their cables swaying wildly while stacked containers, rusted behemoths painted in faded blues and reds, formed a maze of shadows. Sodium lights flickered erratically in the blackout, casting intermittent pools of orange on the wet asphalt, the air humming with the slap of waves against pilings and the creak of mooring lines straining like bowstrings. Hana gasped, rain stinging her face, and scanned the coordinates on her phone. They were close, maybe 200 meters east, where the pier jutted into the bay like an accusing finger. Kenji pulled her behind a container, his hand firm on her wrist. Protective, she told herself, not possessive, though the line blurred in the chaos. Water streamed from his hair, darkening his suit to a sodden black, the cut on his cheek a raw slash against pale skin. "The drop site's that way," he said, nodding toward the end of the pier, voice low over the gale. "Old freighter remnant. Your uncle's note points to a false bottom in container 47B. If the evidence is anywhere, it's there." She yanked her wrist free, autonomy flaring like a spark in the wet. "And if it's a setup? My grandfather wouldn't send killers without reason. What if the Tigers are right? Your crew did hijack it. Loyalty to blood, warred with the evidence piling up, Kenji's ledger, the intruder's hesitation at his reveal. Fear coiled in her gut, not just of the shadows, but of the fracture in her family code, the one her grandfather had drilled into her. Protect the Kims at all costs, no matter the grey. He met her gaze, eyes dark pools reflecting the lightning's flash. "Then we find out. But running blind gets us both drowned or worse. Trust the proof, Hana, not the shouts." His code shone through, restrained power in the way he scanned the perimeter, ears attuned to the night's tells, a distant engine hum, too steady for the storm, the faint crackle of a radio carried on the wind. They moved in tandem, darting from cover to cover, the docks a hazardous labyrinth. Puddles deepened to ankle level, swirling with oil slicks that caught the erratic lights like black mirrors. A botched step sent Hana slipping toward the edge, where the bay churned black and frothy below. But Kenji's arm snaked around her waist, hauling her back with a grunt. "Careful, these piers flood fast in a nor'easter." His touch lingered a beat too long, warmth cutting the cold, stirring that unwelcome pull. Suspicion versus the safety he offered, a man who'd knelt for no one until her. At the coordinates, container 47B squatted like a forgotten relic, its door ajar and padlock dangling, pried years ago, perhaps. They slipped inside, the metallic tang of rust and brine enveloping them, flashlight beams from their phones cutting through the gloom. Stacks of weathered crates lined the walls, manifests yellowed and curling on the floor, shipping logs from 1987, faded ink detailing tea loads from Busan. Hana's fingers trembled as she pried at a loose panel in the floor, revealing a shallow compartment. Dust-covered ledgers, one matching her uncle's description, its pages filled with coded entries. Plates switched at Port Authority. She read aloud, voice hushed, tracing the Hangul script. "Tiger Lieutenant, name redacted, rerouted to ghost vessel. Payment wired to offshore account, not Yamamoto." Kenji knelt beside her, the beam illuminating his face, relief flickering, then hardening as he flipped to a flagged page. Proof. Internal betrayal. Your grandfather covered it up to save face, blamed us to rally the Kims. A burner phone in his pocket buzzed, vibrating against the metal floor. He answered in clipped Japanese, listening more than speaking. Eyes on the pier, 2 tails circling from the east gate. They've got backup. Hana's stomach dropped. Partial discovery soured by immediacy. The ledger confirmed the tiger's rot, but exposure meant war. She pocketed a photocopied manifest, subtle behavioral tell for later leverage, while thunder masked the crunch of gravel outside. Distant watchers, silhouettes under ponchos, fanned out with suppressed rifles, their radios hissing coordinates. A staged diversion. No organized hunt, human error in the storm's cover giving them away too late. We exfiltrate west. My convoy's en route, 5 minutes, Kenji said, helping her to her feet, the ledger tucked under his arm. But as they edged toward the door, headlights pierced the rain. Not his. A tiger van blocking the pier's access, engine idling like a predator's purr. The environment turned foe. A sudden gust slammed the container door shut behind them, jamming it with a clang, trapping them in the echoing dark. Hana pressed against the wall, heart pounding, the ledger's weight a symbol of shattered legacies. If they broke out, would confronting her grandfather's lies forge their bond, or ignite a betrayal that drowned them both in the bay's unforgiving depths? The container's door rattled like a cage in the storm's fury, the wind howling through its seams, as if the bay itself conspired to seal them in. Hina's back pressed against the cold metal wall, the ledger's edges sharp against her ribs, where she'd tucked it inside her coat, its pages heavy with the ink of betrayal. Rain hammered the roof in relentless sheets, turning the confined space into a drum of chaos, the air thick with the musty rot of old wood and the briny sting of seawater seeping under the frame. Lightning cracked outside, illuminating the jammed door in stark white flashes, bent hinges twisted from years of neglect, now fused by the gust's violent slam. Kenji crouched low beside her, derringer in hand, his breath steady, despite the tension etching lines around his eyes. The cut on his cheek wept thin trails of blood, diluted by rain dripping from his sodden hair, but his focus was laser-sharp, scanning the container's interior for leverage. "We can't wait for the convoy," he said, voice a low thread over the gale. "Tigers are closing the net. Radios say 3 units, fanning from the van. They'll breach in minutes." He gestured to a rusted toolbox in the corner, its lid ajar, spilling wrenches and bolts like forgotten teeth. "Pry bar, help me wedge it." Hana nodded, shoving aside her turmoil, the ledger's revelation burning like acid, her grandfather's cover-up, pinning the theft on the Yamamotos to shield a tiger traitor, all to preserve the Kim legacy of unyielding pride. Loyalty clashed with the raw truth, her independence fracturing under the weight of inherited lies. She lunged for the toolbox, fingers numb and slick, grabbing the heaviest bar, a foot-long crowbar, cold and pitted. The floor sloshed underfoot, puddles forming from leaks, the container tilting slightly as waves battered the pier below, threatening to flood their sanctuary into a watery grave. Together, they jammed the bar into the door's seam, muscles straining against the unyielding metal. Kenji's arm brushed hers, a fleeting anchor in the dark, possessiveness tempered by necessity, his code evident in the way he positioned himself as shield. "On 3, he grunted, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. 1, 2... A sharp twist, and the door groaned, inching open against the wind's resistance, but outside, flashlight beams sliced through the rain, converging like predators' eyes, accompanied by the crunch of boots on gravel and clipped Korean commands. "Fan out, check the containers, the boss wants her alive." The partial discovery twisted into peril. The ledger proved the tiger's internal rot, but exposure meant retaliation. Hana's phone vibrated in her pocket, a burner text from an unknown number, coordinates matching the pier, signed J.H. Grandfather? A warning, or a summons to deepen the debt. She silenced it, heart twisting. "They're here," she whispered, peering through the widening gap. Silhouettes moved in the storm's veil, poncho-clad figures with suppressed rifles sweeping methodically, their radios hissing static. Compromised guard rotations, perhaps, if one of Kenji's dockmen had flipped. Kenji shoved the door wider, the wind roaring in like an intruder, whipping debris into a stinging whirlwind. "Out, left flank. Use the stacks for cover." They spilled into the night, the pier a slick battlefield underfoot, waves crashing against pilings with explosive force. Hana sprinted beside him, legs burning, the crowbar still clutched like a talisman. Sodium lights sputtered back to life sporadically, casting elongated shadows that danced like decoys. But the blackout's remnants left pockets of true dark, where danger hid. A shot whispered past, silenced and close, splintering a crate to their right, warning fire, testing their path. Kenji returned it with a pop from the Derringer, forcing the nearest Tiger to duck behind a forklift, its engine hood dented from the impact. "They're coordinated," he said, pulling her into the lee of a container stack, the metal vibrating from the storm's assault. "Intercepted my convoy signal. Jammer on that van. We need to draw them off, buy time for extraction." His eyes met hers, intense in the flashing light, a vow unspoken. His personal code, forged from a past loss, sister taken by rival blades, demanding he shield her, even as her autonomy rebelled against the debt it implied. Hana's mind raced, piecing clues, the text's timing, the intruder's hesitation earlier, subtle behavioral tells, the lead Tiger's glance at his watch like waiting for a signal. "The van," she said, voice urgent over the thunder. "If we sabotage it, cut their comms. I saw fuel lines exposed when they pulled up. Old model, easy target." Prudence versus ambition. It was a risk exposing them, but trust in Kenji's world meant action, not surrender. He nodded once, approval flickering. "You cover me. Aim high, scatter them." They broke cover, darting toward the pier's edge where the van idled, its wipers slashing futilely against the deluge. Hana's boots skidded on oil-slick planks, the bay's roar below a constant threat. One wrong step, and the water would claim them, natural hazard amplified by the gale. A Tiger spotted them, rifle rising, but she swung the crowbar in a wide arc, clanging it against a mooring post to draw fire. Sparks flying, the sound echoing like a diversion. Kenji reached the van first, sliding underneath on his back. Rain pooling around him as he slashed at the undercarriage with a pocket knife from his coat. Sparks erupted, fuel hissing, the engine coughing into silence with a final sputter. The Tigers converged, shouts cutting through the wind. "Flank them! Cut off the end!" But without the van's jammer, Kenji's radio crackled to life. "Convoy 2 minutes out! Hold the line!" Hana backed toward him, firing a scavenged flare gun from the container. Bright red streak arcing into the night, blinding their pursuers momentarily. One Tiger lunged from the shadows, grabbing her arm with a vice grip, his breath hot and ragged. "Kim Blood, Ji-hoon wants you back." Up close, she saw the tell. A tiger tattoo mismatched, ink faded, not Core Incheon. A hired gun, bought loyalty fraying under pressure. She twisted free, knee driving into his gut, the man doubling over into the puddle. Kenji was there in an instant, hauling her away as the convoy's headlights pierced the storm. 2 black SUVs roaring onto the pier, tires hydroplaning but holding. Gunfire erupted, suppressed bursts trading with the reinforcements, the environment turning lethal. A crate toppled in the crossfire, blocking the Tiger's advance, but splintering wood rained down like shrapnel. They piled into the lead SUV, doors slamming as it peeled out, the pier receding in a blur of lights and waves. Inside, the cabin thrummed with urgency, guards barking into radios, wipers battling the torrent. Kenji slumped beside her, a graze on his arm seeping red through his sleeve. But his hand found hers briefly, commitment forged in the fire, protection, not possession. The ledger safe in her lap, Hana stared at the text again. Come home. Truth waits. Grandfather's code cracked open, but as the convoy raced toward the city lights, a trailing headlight flickered in the mirror, persistent, unyielding. Had the sabotage held, or was the true betrayal closer, waiting to unravel their fragile alliance in the heart of Yokohama's shadowed empire? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The convoy's SUVs tore through Yokohama's rain-veiled arteries, engines snarling against the storm's onslaught, tires hydroplaning over flooded streets that mirrored the neon haze in fractured pools. Hana pressed against the leather seat, the ledger a solid weight in her lap, its pages whispering secrets with every jolt, betrayals etched in faded ink, a tiger lieutenant's greed unraveling the Kim legacy like a frayed rope. The cabin smelled of wet wool and cordite, the guards' radios crackling with terse updates, tail confirmed, single vehicle, unmarked sedan, hanging back at 2 blocks. Kenji sat beside her, arm bandaged hastily with a strip from his shirt, the graze a burning reminder of the pier's chaos. His eyes, shadowed in the dashboard glow, flicked to the rear view, jaw set like granite. We shake them at the next light, he said, voice low and commanding, directing the driver through a labyrinth of back alleys where warehouses loomed like silent sentinels. Their loading bays shuttered against the gale. The trailing headlight persisted, a persistent spectre weaving through traffic. Distant watchers, likely a Tiger Scout relaying positions via encrypted app. Human error in the storm's interference, giving them a slim edge. Hana's phone buzzed again, the screen lighting her face. Another text from J.H. Dinah, now, end this. Her grandfather's summons, laced with urgency, pulling her back to the heart of the night's unraveling. The diner, Midnight Harbor, its greasy sanctuary now a beacon of confrontation. Why there? Neutral ground, perhaps, where old codes could clash without immediate bloodshed, or a trap, Ji-hoon leveraging family ties to reclaim what he saw as stolen blood. Hana's fingers tightened on the ledger. Autonomy warring with the debt of blood, protect the Kims, or expose their lies. He's calling me back, she murmured to Kenji, showing him the screen. To the diner. Thinks you've hidden me there, like some prize. Kenji's expression darkened, the scar on his jaw pulling taut. Ji-hoon Kim, stubborn as the sea. He covered the betrayal to save face, blamed my family for his own rot. But if he wants a reckoning, we give it on our terms. He leaned forward, barking into the radio. Divert to Chinatown. Full stop at the diner. No engagement unless fired upon. The convoy veered, cutting through a side street, where the air thickened with the scent of street food vendors, hunkering under awnings, steam rising like ghosts from noodle carts. They arrived in a screech of brakes, the lead SUV pulling curbside before the diner's fogged windows, its neon sign flickering open like a defiant pulse. Rain drummed on the roof, the street empty save for the trailing sedan idling at the block's end, watching, waiting. Kenji exited first, umbrella snapping open, ushering Hana inside with a hand at her back, shielding, not claiming, though the gesture stirred that complex pull. The diner was dimly lit, Taro the cook wiping counters with wary eyes, the air heavy with cooling oil, and the faint buzz of a single patron nursing coffee in the corner. No grandfather yet, but the bell's jingle felt ominous, like the calm before a tidal surge. They slid into the same booth from hours ago, the vinyl sticky under Hana's damp coat, the ledger hidden beneath the table. Kenji's men fanned out, 2 at the door, 1 in the kitchen, radios humming softly. He comes alone, or we walk, Kenji said, pouring black coffee from a pot Taro slid over, steam curling between them like unspoken vows. Hana nodded, her ethics clashing with the night's revelations. The ledger's truth demanded confrontation, not blind loyalty. Minutes stretched, the storm's rhythm syncing with her pulse until headlights swept the windows. A battered taxi pulling up, its door creaking open to reveal Ji-hoon Kim, hunched against the rain, face etched with decades of grudges. He burst in like a squall, umbrella discarded, eyes locking on Hana with a mix of fury and relief. At 72, he was a wiry force, dressed in a threadbare coat, smelling of Seoul's markets, his voice booming in Korean-accented English that cut the diner's hush. "Hana ya, you let this dog steal you away, hide you in his den like a thief in the night." He advanced on the booth, finger jabbing at Kenji, the words spilling hot. "You stole our granddaughter and hid her here. The ledger's ours. Your docs took everything, left my son to drown in that accident. Give her back, Yamamoto, or the tigers finish what they started." The diner froze, Taro ducking behind the counter, the lone patron slipping out into the rain. Hana rose, heart aching at the sight, grandfather's pride cracked by desperation, the family code he'd instilled now a chain. "Grandpa, stop," she said, voice steady, sliding the ledger onto the table. Its cover thudded softly, pages fanning to the damning entry. "It's not what you think. The shipment. Your lieutenant betrayed us. Rerouted it himself, pocketed the cut. Blaming the Yamamotos was the cover-up. Uncle's notes prove it." Ji-hoon's face crumpled, eyes darting to the ledger, hands trembling as he snatched it up. Rain dripped from his coat, pooling on the floor like spilled tears. "Lies! No, the plates, the manifests." He traced the ink, the truth sinking in like lead, his shouts fading to a rasp. The threat had been real, organized from within. Rival factions exploiting the lie. The tigers push a desperate grasp at old glory. Victory's cost loomed, exposure of the Kim rot, sacrifice of legacy, injury to trust that might never fully heal. Kenji watched, unmoving, then, slowly, deliberately, slid from the booth and knelt on the linoleum, head bowed slightly, the Yakuza boss yielding in a gesture that echoed his personal code, power restrained, vows to innocence unbroken. "Elder Kim," he said, voice even, eyes meeting Ji-hoon's. "No theft, no hiding. I protected her because she's worth more than debts. Take the ledger, end the war. But Hana chooses her path." The old man stared, the shout dying in his throat, replaced by a weary exhale. Hana stepped between them, hand on her grandfather's arm. Autonomy reclaimed, bonds tested but reforged. "It's over, Grandpa, no more shadows." Outside, the sedan peeled away, tires hissing into the night. The trailing threat dissolving in the storm's wake, backup arriving too late, institutional limits and natural chaos sealing the fracture. In the quiet aftermath, as Taro resumed his wiping and the rain eased to a drizzle, Hana felt the true treasure emerge. Not the ledger's spoils, but the protection Kenji offered without chains, the trust earned through fire, the found family bridging old divides. Ji-hoon pocketed the book, nodding once, a grudging truce, before pulling her into a fierce hug, his whispers of apology mingling with the coffee's aroma. Weeks later, the docks hummed with cautious peace, shipments flowing unhindered, the Yamamoto Gumi's code holding firm against the tiger's retreat. Hana stood at the diner's window, watching Kenji's Mercedes glide by, a subtle nod exchanged. Commitment, not possession, a future pledged in shared glances. The adventure's scars lingered, a faint limp from the pier, exposure's chill in family calls. But loyalty outlasted the power plays, memories forging a chosen path stronger than blood's tangled debts. In Yokohama's underbelly, where currents shifted but never stilled, they'd found something rarer, each other unyielding against the tide. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.